In this lesson, we'll see what is authentication in API and what is the importance of this authentication, and finally what are the different types of authentication we'll see. So let's see what is authentication in API. Authentication API, it means just verifying who you are before allowing access to an API. So previously we saw like there is GET API and POST API. These two till now we discussed. So to get data, we just need to write the API or we just call the request and then we get some data. But it's not the situation all the time in real world. Real world, those type of data is not available for everybody or every application. So to protect those data or to view those data, generally each application or company or some other thing, they create some authentication type. Based on that information, basically they verifies whether you are really eligible to access those data or not, and based on that it will allow you to use those data or to access that data through the API. That's why it is telling like authentication means verifying who you are before allowing access to an API. It's just like logging into a site. An API wants to ensure is this request coming from an authorized user or system. And if the authentication failed, then generally we get any of these, either 401 unauthorized or 403 forbidden. So this is the error code 401 or 403. This two is error code and one is unauthorized and other is forbidden. Now let's see why authentication is required. So it helps us to protect sensitive data. Then it controls user access. That means who can access the data or request or available resources. It also controls those things. It helps us to track and limit the uses. And finally, it prevents unauthorized actions. Now let's see the types of authentication. So there are variations of API authentication. Some of them are here, like OAuth, Basic Auth, then token based, then API key, OAuth 2, and digest or AWS signature. So each of them has different limitation or different types of uses. So let's see one by one. So OAuth, that means there is no authentication is required and it's open API, and here we don't need to log in or we don't need to verify anything. And some of the example of OAuth is public APIs like currency converters. So if you want to convert one currency to another currency, there is API. So for that you don't need any authentication. And in Postman you generally don't need to set anything, so just simply request that API, you will get the data. Now the basic authentication. Here we need to sense the username and password, which will be encoded in base 64. And simple internal APIs are using basic authentication. Like when you are developing or when the user of some product of a company using some type of API, they use this type of thing internally. And in Postman, you can also set this type of authentication. You have to go to authorization tab and then basic authentication, and then you have to enter the username and password like that. Now next come to the token based authentication type. So here it sends a generated token in the request header. So when you raise the request like that API, like get post method, at the time you send a token with as a header. And most of the modern APIs are using this token based thing. And in Postman, we can set it in this way. We have to go authentication tab, bearer token, paste token, but there is other way also. I'll show you. Now the API key. So mostly developers, they use this API key, and this is a unique key like a password sent with each request. And in Postman also we can add this thing. Now OAuth 2, this is the most secure standard for user-based authentication. Most of the companies like big giants, Google, Yahoo, Facebook, this type of people, they are using OAuth 2.0 and it's logging based API. And in Postman we can also set this thing. Now finally, digest or AWS signature. This is the advanced mechanism. And here most of the time the enterprise APIs are using this thing. We also use Postman to configure this type of AWS signature or digest type of authentication.